Welcome to Crunchy Stewardship. I'm Chrissy Rombach.
And I'm Katie Fiola-Jones. We're cousins on a mission to honor God by stewarding our health spiritually, mentally, and physically.
From ancestral nutrition and natural remedies to biblical finance and holistic health, we are digging deep into how God intended us to live.
So grab yourself a raw milk latte and join us as we unpack the ins and outs of Crunchy Stewardship. Hey friends, welcome back to Crunchy Stewardship. We are actually recording probably the earliest that we have ever recorded before, and so Chrissy and I are a little tired. It's 8 a.m. So it's not like crazy early, but it's pretty early for wanting to turn your brain on in this way and think hard thoughts. But I feel like both of us are here. I mean, Chrissy, I don't know how you're going to do today. You're basically on vacation and waking up early, which for me is like a special kind of tired because I'm like already in lazy mode. So,
well, I'm flying home today, so lazy mode is turning off by the end of the day. So we're just turning it off a little bit early, and
you'll be fine.
That's just how it is. It's great. I'll take a nap on the plane.
In our weakness, He is strong, and He will shine through us today. Thank you, Lord, for that. No, we'll be fine. We're excited to get to record. We just know the importance of getting these episodes out, and we just want to continue to get them out on Fridays for everybody. And yeah, so that's why we're here and making sure that we get these episodes recorded for you guys.
And sometimes that means recording at weird times of day.
Totally.
Then not the best mindset. Morning mindset is hard, but that's okay.
So bear with us today. We are continuing in our Fertility Series and going to be jumping over to talk about 3 things today, kind of combined, because they're pretty similar. There's fragrance, parabens, and phthalates. And you'll notice in our conversation there will be some similarities to our last week's conversation, which was
about PFAS.
Why am I forgetting the name? Oh yeah, PFAS. Thank you. I'm like, there we go. Already forgetting things. PFAS. And so there's like some similarities because they're all different forms of chemicals, but we're going to talk about specifically how these 3 things are disrupting our endocrine system and what kinds of impacts they are having on our fertility specifically. And there are differences to each of them and where we find them in our household and daily products and things like that. So we felt like it was important to separate them into a different category or a different podcast today. And yeah, we'll be going deeper into those things. But before we do, Chrissy is going to bring us our random revelation today. Take it away, Chrissy.
Yeah, so funny. The way I found this random revelation is because I pulled a typical Katie, and I was not prepared with my random revelation of the week. And so I really just Googled crunchy fun fact. And the very first thing that came up was from Google Gemini. It says, the sound of a crunch increases the enjoyment of food because it stimulates both taste and hearing. And I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Because if you think about like eating a potato chip versus eating yogurt, like the enjoyment of that food is so incredibly different. Like think of how you feel after eating a singular potato chip versus after eating Greek yogurt. It's just such a different feeling. And it makes so much sense that food companies would use that to their advantages. Like if you think of modern snacks, they're all crunchy, We've got Cheez-Its, we've got crackers, we've got chips, we've got pretzels. Like all of these things are very crunchy items. And if manufacturers and food companies understand the fact that a crunch increases your enjoyment of the food, and they can use it to their advantage by making you want more to make it more crunchy. And I was trying to think, I was like, okay, potato chips are really crunchy, they give you that sound, the the sound that drives me crazy, actually. I can't stand it, but that's a personal problem. As if anyone listening to this podcast knows me, I'm literally the person, like, in Bible study or even in church, someone will be clicking their pen and I just gently reach my hand over and I put my hand on their hands in their lap and I look
That's
at
really
them
funny.
very gently and I say, stop clicking your pen, please.
No.
It is kind of funny. I took my friend's name tag out of her hand a few weeks ago because she was like flipping her name tag over her finger. And I took it from her because anyways, that's besides the point. So I was thinking about food that we find in nature, like food that God created directly from the earth. And the crunchiest food item I could think of was an apple. And I was like, honestly, when you think of like coming in from outside in the summertime, it's hot, you're thirsty and hungry, taking a bite of a cold, fresh, juicy apple is so satisfying. Like in that moment, I would not want yogurt. I would want an apple. Similarly, like sitting poolside, chips are very satisfying. And so, yeah, I think that's just an interesting thing to keep in mind is that like manufacturing companies definitely use the crunch aspect to make us enjoy their food more so than we would if it was soggy. Because nobody likes a soggy chip, let's be honest.
No. This is so funny. I don't know why I was remembering this random fact, but one of my favorite Christmas movies is the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I don't recommend it as a family movie. There's some language in it, and there is some just innuendos and things. So it's not really like a very wholesome Christmas movie, but it's quite hilarious. There are just some scenes in there that just kill me because they're just so funny. Anyway, for those of you who are familiar with the movie, you may or may not remember that Clark Griswold, who is the main character, has a job, and I only noticed it probably not this Christmas, but it was the last Christmas, I believe, because we watched this one. It's my Christmas movie of choice every year. Wes's is Elf, and so we usually watch those two Christmas movies along with other ones, but Christmas Vacation is my choice, and we usually watch it. And last year, I realized for the first time what Clark Griswold's job was. And you may or may not have noticed it before, but he is, and I looked it up because I wanted to know the specific title. He works as a food additive designer, and he is specifically a chemical engineer for a company that produces food preservatives. He is most notably recognized for inventing a non-nutritive cereal varnish, a crunch enhancer designed to prevent cereal from getting soggy in the milk. And it's just so funny because I would have never thought about that in the past, that like, oh, his job is basically making things more addictive. But the previous Christmas, I was like, oh my gosh, Wes, did you hear that? He is part of the problem. And I went on this whole thing about how funny it is that that was his job. And so then this year when we watched it again, I was like, I don't know if I could support this show if this is his job and he's the person that's making the cereal more addictive for kids and things like that. It's so funny. But anyway, there's like only a couple scenes in there where they talk about it, but it really stood out to me. And so today with your fun fact, I was thinking about Clark Griswold and his crunch enhancer that he designed.
So wait, is this like a character in the movie? Like the character's job?
Yes.
Okay, but it's not, he's not a real, well, obviously he's a real person, but like the person's job in real life is not.
No, he's an actor. No. It's just the character's job. Clark Griswold is the dad, the main guy in it. And there's like all these scenes about him like getting his bonus for the year. And so you see him in the office like talking with his boss and other coworkers, and there's only a few of them. Like it's not even the main point of the movie, But it is a point about him getting his bonus. So they have some scenes about him in the office talking about his crunch enhancer that he developed at this cereal, or this like food engineering company. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've never noticed this before, because it wasn't on my mind before, but now it is. And I just think it's really funny.
That probably is a real job,
there you
though,
go.
Somewhere, in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, out here in Michigan, we have cereal companies. We have Kellogg's, and I am sure, well, I know that they're downstate in Battle Creek, Michigan, which is where my grandparents were from, and that's where Cereal City is. And Vani Hari, actually on my kind of like the kickstart to my crunchy journey, I read a book by Vani Hari called Feeding You Lies. And then I ended up like following her on Instagram and on social media and joining her email list. And very early in my crunchy journey, she was doing all these protests against Kellogg's and their food dyes in children's foods. And she rallied up a whole group of people from across the U.S. to go down to Cereal City, basically Kellogg's headquarters. I actually don't think that Cereal City specifically exists anymore, which was more of their tourism thing. And I had been there as a kid and I loved it. And you would see like the process of cereal being made, and you get to like, you know, Tony the Tiger was there and all these fun things. It was like a big museum.
Okay, honestly, that sounds like a blast. I probably would have loved it also. I think I'd be horrified by it now. But as a kid, that would have been so fun.
Yes, it is funny.
It's like Disney.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is funny.
Really fun as a kid. Now as an adult, I'm like,
But yeah, she like took a group of people down there, and I was like, hey, I know that place, basically. And that was kind of wild. But yeah, Cereal City, it was pretty cool. I heard that it doesn't exist anymore. Like they had to close it down or something. I don't know. But it was really fun at the time, and I really loved it.
Did Vani Hari shut it down?
No, I think it's been closed for a bit. But that would have been funny if like she was the reason, because
like, shut this down.
I think a lot of families would have been upset too, because it was like a fun kids attraction, and I have great memories with my grandparents going there as a kid. So, yeah. But there you go.
Transition into our actual episode for today. We are not going to talk about parabens, phthalates, and fragrances. Now, those three, they are three completely separate items that are put into a lot of personal care products like shampoos, conditioners, lotions, makeup, things like that. But they're all separate in their own special ways. So we are going to go through each one and talk about why it is important to, or what exactly it does, how it works, and then the effect that it has on our bodies when we use it. Now, it's important to remember that using a product with a single paraben or a single phthalate or a single fragrance is not going to immediately kill you, obviously. We're all still living and we've all used these products. It's also not going to immediately make you infertile. As we all know, we have plenty of friends who love Bath & Body Works who get pregnant right away without even blinking, right? And it's important to remember that these products do not work individually by themselves. They all impact our endocrine system, so our hormone systems in general. But when you put them all together and you use them frequently, it creates such a burden on your body. And that burden is what is causing the infertility, the endocrine disruption, the issues. It can even probably affect your mental health. I don't actually know, but I'm pretty confident it probably can, just because it's all connected. So it's the burden of using so many of these multiple times a day that is causing the problems with our endocrine system. So Katie, do you want to start off with talking about phthalates?
Yeah. I want to add on really quick to your idea of kind of that burden. But I've heard stories of people who have removed even just small amounts of products that have any of these, endocrine disrupting kind of like chemicals. And when they actually remove certain things, they start to feel relief pretty quickly. And like when Chrissy's talking about this like burden that your body, like that accumulates in your body, it's basically like this cumulative effect. You know, if you're being exposed to these items, even at low doses, but frequently, it's like continuously sending your body a signal to throw your hormones off. Like we talked about this last week, how the PFAS will confuse your hormone system, your endocrine system. And so it'll like tell your body to start producing certain hormones and not produce other hormones, or it thinks that it's producing hormones, but it's not. And so if you continuously use a shampoo or a deodorant or like anything that has like a fragrance in it on a regular basis, it's like giving your body that signal multiple times to do something. And so it's like pushing a button over and over in your body saying like, yes, go, go, go. It's like on. And it's not necessarily like ever pushing the off button.
And because this came to mind and I wanted to make sure I had the numbers correct. So EWG did a study on how many personal care products people use throughout the day. And their study came to the conclusion that on average, the average woman applies about 12 personal care products to their bodies throughout the day. So if you think about a personal care product, think you wake up in the morning, you take a shower, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, shaving cream, right? Then you get out of the shower, you put on lotion. That's 5. You wash your face, 6. Toothpaste, 7. You put on some foundation, 8. Concealer, 9. Then you wash your hands, 10. Okay, so that's already 10
Deodorant.
personal care products that you've used. Oh, mascara probably has stuff.
Deodorant.
And deodorant, boom, there's 12.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you've just used 12 personal care products and you only got ready for the day. That's it. Those 12 personal care products, on average, have upwards of 168 chemicals in them.
Whoa.
So if you think about the cumulative burden that you are putting on your body every single day just by getting ready for the day with all of these products that contain parabens, phthalates, and fragrances, the burden that you're putting on your body with 168 endocrine-disrupting chemicals is astronomical. And so if you think about that, like even just changing 1 or 2 things at a time, like we've said before, as soon as you run out of your shampoo, change it to a shampoo that doesn't have fragrances or phthalates or parabens in it, like a more natural version. As soon as you run out of your body wash, switch it out. And slowly but surely, like Katie said, this is one of those things that you can actually see and feel a difference in your body when you change your personal care products. I notice it. I don't know if you notice this, Katie, but I notice it a lot in my sinuses. Like with eating sugar and having more fragrances on me and around me, I like can feel more pressure in my sinuses, like in my face almost. And it's like the inflammation in my face. I don't know what it is, but I can definitely tell a difference when I've been exposed to more chemicals throughout the day than when I haven't. So
yeah,
just wanted to add that little 2 cents there.
Mine's usually like headaches, especially when it comes to fragrances. When I smell, especially like when somebody has a very strong perfume or lotion, or they use like the scent pods in their laundry, and so then their clothes smell very strongly. I tend to get headaches if I'm exposed too long, like if I'm hanging out with that person and we're sitting next to each other and I'm just like, oh my goodness. But I really try my best to respectfully distance myself from those people when I do smell that, or if I notice that they have really strong scents on them. And so I move myself slightly further away. And honestly, even just breathing through my mouth versus my nose. So maybe it does have to do with sinuses, because when it does come in through my nose, I feel like it goes straight to my brain quicker, which I actually do think that is true, because the whole thing with mouth breathing, when you breathe through your mouth versus your nose, your brain doesn't get oxygen as quickly when you breathe through your mouth versus your nose. And so that's why the whole mouth breathing thing is a thing in the crunchy world. And you want to use something like mouth tape, which Wes Jones, my husband, has been using mouth tape lately. And he's been enjoying it, it sounds like. But his mustache is one of the bigger challenges at this moment.
That's wild. My husband could never.
We figured out a solution.
Max could never. He has a deviated septum. He would actually probably suffocate.
Oh.
I know. I don't really know
Yikes.
how. I would love to talk to somebody about mouth breathing and deviated septums and like how those go together. Because if you quite literally can't breathe out of your nose, you like don't have an option.
Yeah. Well, I would choose to live in that situation.
Agreed.
I would choose to live by, breathing through my mouth and needing to say, okay, I don't need these other health benefits to breathing through my nose. I'd rather just live. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of like health benefits and things when you breathe through your nose versus your mouth. And I think it'd be cool to do a whole episode on like dental, like a topic about dental stuff, because that is, I've learned a lot recently.
I'll add it to the list of episode ideas.
Yay. Okay, so was I talking about phthalates first?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to read this sentence to you because I am not an expert on these things, and we often have to look up specifics on these topics. Because oftentimes, like for me, when it comes to this crunchy stuff, I just remember things like phthalates are bad, and that's all I remember. But I'm like, could I answer like why and how they're bad specifically off the top of my head sometimes? No. I just remember the most important fact of like phthalates are bad. Don't use them. These are, and just generally where I find them. So I'm just going to read this sentence that phthalates are plasticizers used to make plastics more flexible and are widely used in cosmetics, lotions, and food packaging. They are notoriously anti-androgenic. Is that how you say that word, Chrissy?
Androgenic.
Thank you.
Like against androgens.
Yes, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that they interfere with male sex hormones, though they do heavily impact female fertility as well. So I think that phthalates are often considered like, so when you have a yoga mat, for example, yoga mats are nice and squishy and flexible, and they're soft and fluffy. So if you think about like any kind of like plasticky material, kind of like that, or anything that is, okay, I think phthalates, and I don't know this for sure, so maybe Chrissy, as I'm saying this, you can look it up. I think phthalates are also in many clothing things that are plasticky, because it does give it a more flexible, soft bendiness. So look that up while I'm talking, because I don't know, and I don't want to stand by my word on that, but I know they're in yoga mats for sure.
The answer is yes. They are commonly found in clothing, particularly synthetic fabrics like polyester, printed graphics, artificial leather, and plastic-based elastics like spandex.
Yes. So this has been hard because I used to be in the crunchy space. I wouldn't even say crunchy. I was more eco-friendly in my 20s than I am now.
Gosh,
because
you started using like reusable like beeswax plastic bags.
Yes.
For your sandwiches and things before I even knew what beeswax was.
Yes. And I think that is there were a number of factors. My sister-in-law also is very earth conscious, and we just had lots of conversations over my early years of dating Wes and marriage and everything. And so my sister-in-law definitely had an impact of that, where we would just talk about like ways to reduce, reuse, recycle. And I loved that. I loved that, reusing and reducing and recycling would help save me money. I loved just the idea that it was reducing just the waste in the world. And so I loved finding things that were made with basically recycled plastics and whatnot. anything that was recycled. And it was like, this is made from 100% recycled water bottles or whatever. You know, when you see that on marketing. And so I loved doing that. But now, since then, I have realized that it introduces more phthalates to my system because oftentimes you need to add these chemicals to break down the plastics and to keep them soft and usable for other products. So such as putting them in clothing. So if you ever have like 100% recycled shirt or whatever, that will be full of those chemicals, unfortunately. And so I realized that I had these dish towels that I was gifted that were made from recycled water bottles. I think they were made from recycled something. But it's that fabric where it's like soft, but you can kind of tell it's not something like cotton. And so it's got kind of a different feel to it. But there are a lot of things like that I had around my house that I'm now realizing we're introducing these chemicals to our household, but also microplastics in general, which we'll talk more about microplastics too in a future episode. But all of these recycled products have these phthalates in them. And so I was realizing that we were heavily exposed to it in our household. So I've been slowly getting rid of things. Towels was actually like dish towels for us was really easy to get rid of because we have so many of them. I don't even know why, but it was like one of those things where I'm like, we just have a lot of random dish towels. And I think maybe because they make good gifts. And so I would get like ones with like chickens on them because everybody always gets me stuff with chickens on them. And like, just, I don't know. Anyway, so I got rid of a handful of
chickens,
those.
Did I see that you got baby chicks?
Oh, everyone's been asking us that because I did post, we use family album and Chrissy's on our family album. And then we post pictures of Malachi there because we don't put him on social media. And there was a picture of him with chickens. Yes, you are correct. But no, we have not gotten them yet. Those were just at the farm where we pick up our milk every week. They have baby chicks right now. And so I brought him in so he could see. He literally, Chrissy, picked up a chicken by its wing and was like, chick. It was how he says chicken. And he just was like holding it. I was like, Malachi, no, don't pick it up like that. Because he saw me holding them and like, showing him how to pet them. But of course he tries. I couldn't believe he actually caught it too. But he got it.
Impressive.
Sure enough.
I was really surprised. I was like, did they really get 20 chickens? That's crazy.
Yeah, that was a lot. And that was like only half of them that they had there too.
Wow.
It was a lot. But
okay, sorry, that was a little side comment.
Are milk farmers and they live on a farm and obviously have lots of animals. So anyway, yes. So I mentioned that phthalates specifically do impact male sex hormones. And so I learned that phthalates inhibit the production of testosterone in the, I don't even know what these are, Leydig cells, Chrissy?
Leydig cells. I think those are like if you go back to like our male fertility episode, when I went through the anatomy and physiology of male fertility, I left out big fancy words like this because they just make it more cumbersome and difficult to remember.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure those are like the stem cells that sperm originate from.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, then that's a big deal because we want those to work properly. So if the phthalates are inhibiting production of testosterone there, that would make a big impact to male fertility. And obviously this does lead to reduction in the sperm concentration. It says that it also leads to poor sperm motility, which is basically how well they can swim. And they need to swim well in order to fertilize an egg. That's important. And then they also impact the morphology, which is the shape of each of the sperm, which if you're not familiar with that, I did kind of talk about that in that episode Chrissy mentioned. So you can go back and listen to that if you haven't checked it out. They also induce oxidative stress, which can cause DNA damage within the sperm itself. So that's really important. And then in female fertility, for women, phthalates interfere with, say that word, Chrissy. You don't even know how to say it.
I had to look at it. Steroidogenesis. It's the production
Big
of
words.
steroid-like hormones in our body, so like cortisol and estrogen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because we talked about you explained to us how those are related, cortisol and estrogen, in our previous episode. So this can disrupt the normal development of ovarian follicles, which release the eggs, and then high levels of phthalate exposure have been linked to an increased risk of endometriosis. I actually do know that word. And it impacts and alters the menstrual cycle and diminished ovarian reserve, which is basically a premature aging of the ovaries, which that is really interesting hearing that now and saying this out loud because I don't even remember who it was, but a friend back in Colorado, I remember she had talked to me about how she had like premature aging of the ovaries. And that's
So
really
funny.
interesting.
I had a friend with that issue also, and she said she had to take some sort of hormone supplement, something, because her doctor essentially told her she was going into menopause at like age 20.
Yeah. Okay. Well, see here, this
Yeah.
is what's so scary too. Like, even if you're not thinking about getting pregnant, like if you're past the point of wanting to get pregnant, so maybe you're in your 30s or 40s, but you're not necessarily ready for menopause, the phthalates, things like this will impact your hormones in such a way and your body in such a way that it can trigger premenopause. So that is, I didn't even think about that. That's pretty intense. And also a big deal because, I mean, menopause. Anyway, so that's what phthalates do.
I
They
did want to
basically are
touch on,
hormone
so
blockers.
you mentioned specifically with the male fertility section of phthalates that they induce oxidative stress within the body, which can cause DNA damage within the sperm itself. So oxidative stress in the body causes DNA damage across all of the cells in the body. It's not just the sperm or the eggs. And one of the beautiful things is God created antioxidants. And so an antioxidant is a food that you can eat to prevent oxidization. Oxidization? Yeah. So it's an antioxidizer. So it prevents the oxidation or this DNA damage of the cells. So foods that have antioxidants in them are like a lot of berries, so blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, which remember, those are very important to get organic. And if you're not going to get them organic, you need to make sure you wash them in baking soda and vinegar before you use them because they have a lot of glyphosate on them. But that's beside the point. So lots of fruits and vegetables have antioxidants in them, and I think pomegranates also are really high in antioxidants. And so those are some foods that if you are trying to cleanse your body from these phthalates and things like that, you can incorporate berries and things and fruits and things that can help to reduce the effects of these phthalates pretty quickly in your body.
Actually, you should look this up too because I don't actually know the answer. Can you
I'm
like
just the Google queen
eliminate?
today.
Huh?
I said I'm the Google queen today.
You are. You're really good. You're really fast at it. I feel like sometimes when I'm looking things up, it's not as quick. Well, okay, here's what I would like to look up is whether these three things, phthalates, parabens, and fragrances, like how they can be detoxed from our system. Because like you were saying, like antioxidants can help with removing the phthalates from our system, which is great. So I because for something like PFAS, which we talked about last week, they are considered forever chemicals, which they're called that because they accumulate and they're very, very extremely difficult to detox from your system. There are some ways, but it's like, again, they're forever. They're going to kind of build up and stay there, which is really bad, and which is why you really, really want to work hard to eliminate those. But I think for these, you can like detox them, right?
Yeah, so actually the first thing that comes up on Google when you ask about a detox is just says avoiding these chemicals for 28 days can pretty much detox your body. Nua Fertility says that they said avoiding packaged food for 3 days resulted in a 66% drop in BPA levels. So that's microplastics, not necessarily parabens and phthalates and things like that.
The
but
phthalates
they're all
would be in that too.
okay.
Because remember, it's like it's the plastics, but it's like softening the plastics.
Yeah. So it really sounds like just avoiding them just detoxes your body. Because thankfully enough, they're not like PFAS where our bodies can't process them. Like our bodies process these out pretty quickly because they recognize them as a toxin. And so it gets rid of it very fast. And so just avoiding them can cleanse your body of these chemicals very, very quickly.
There we go. I wonder if, now I'm kind of curious if they're similar to something like heavy metals, which can be encouraged to be detoxed from your system through something like an Epsom salt bath. Does that make sense?
I think so. I want to say that a foot detox, which remember, you should not do a detox if you're pregnant. You should only do detoxes if you're not pregnant, and children should not do detoxes. But I'm pretty sure a foot detox. So I think warm water, apple cider vinegar, ginger, and there's one other ingredient. I want to say like lemon juice or something like that. And then you soak your feet for like 30 minutes can actually detox heavy metals and things from your body through the pores of your feet, because the pores of your feet are very big and porous. And so those products can pull a lot of toxins and heavy metals out through your feet. But I know clove is also really good for detox, but there's specific ways that you are supposed to use it for detox purposes. So maybe we could do a whole detox episode. That would be fun.
Yes, I agree.
Stay tuned, guys. We're adding that to the list of episodes too. Okay, let's move on to parabens, because we are starting to run a little bit short on time with how much we've been talking. All right, so parabens, some ways you can identify parabens in your products is often they have the full word paraben in the word. So methylparaben, propylparaben, butylparaben, it literally says paraben in it. It's a preservative that they use in cosmetics and personal care products to prevent the growth of bacteria and mold, which makes a lot of sense. Katie, did you as a kid ever do like paraben wax on your hand?
Yeah, that's so funny that you say that.
And we had a whole like hot wax thing at home, and my sisters and I would dip our hand in the hot wax and then pull it out, let it dry, and dip our hand in it again and let it dry until we had like probably 20 layers of paraben wax on our hands, and then we would wait for it all to dry and just crunch.
Chrissy,
it was great.
I just
did you do that with us?
No, well, yes, but I'm laughing because it's not paraben wax, it's paraffin with an F. So it's
it probably still has parabens in it, though.
It probably does. So take that wax. Because I was thinking, fine. I'm like, yes, wait, I have
can't go off
that.
On the wax.
It's a colorless, petroleum-derived, soft, solid, widely used for candles, lubrication, and moisture sealing. So, yes, it's made from petroleum. So that's also not good.
Essentially, so what I'm saying is valid, that we used to soak our hands and feet, the most porous parts of our bodies, in this paraffin wax. And I'm sure we probably got a lot of toxins from that. That's okay. You know what? We're still alive.
Here we
Anyways, the way that parabens work in our body is they work on the process known as estrogenic activity. So they're weaker than natural estrogen that is produced in the body, but they mimic that estrogen and they bind to estrogen receptors, which essentially means that the body is interpreting that there's more estrogen than there actually is. And so it's going to stop releasing as much estrogen. So this is one of those that like one single use of a paraben is not going to affect all of your estrogen receptors and turn off your estrogen processing or creation for good. It's the burden, the cumulative burden of using so many parabens is what's going to trick your body into thinking that it has enough estrogen. And so then it decreases the release of estrogens in the body, which is no bueno. So for female fertility specifically, it tricks the hypothalamic pituitary gland, or the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis in the brain, which, as I said before, into thinking that there's already enough estrogen. So then it prevents the body from creating more estrogen. And this can actually disrupt hormone spikes. So I don't know. I think I mentioned it before, the new fertility tracker that I got called Anito. It's not sponsored, but if Anito is listening and wants to sponsor us, by all means, we would love it. So it's one where you can actually track estrogen, progesterone, follicle-stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone throughout your cycle. And it's really fascinating to see the spike of estrogen on one day, and then the next day you have the spike of LH and FSH, and then both of those go down, and then slowly but surely progesterone starts to rise. And so if these parabens are interfering with that estrogen spike, then the whole rest of the hormone cascade is just going to be off, because it kind of all comes down to that estrogen spike to start off with. And then specifically with men, so men don't have as much estrogen to begin with, but estrogen is still important in a man's body. And so having this extra estrogenic activity, or the body thinking that there's extra estrogen, can suppress testosterone production and impair the creation of sperm. And so that's similar when we talk about how men who are overweight, because estrogen is a fat-soluble hormone, so men who are overweight tend to have higher levels of estrogen and therefore lower levels of testosterone and higher likelihoods of infertility. And so we see that a lot, specifically with men who carry a lot of their weight in their hips, and their body kind of starts to take on more of a female figure, so to say. That means that's just a physical sign of they have really high estrogen in their body, and so they probably have really low testosterone and therefore low sperm counts and swimmabilities, motility. But swimmabilities is more fun to say.
Swimmabilities.
When it comes to sperm.
Yeah, I wonder, so as you were talking about like estrogen increasing in men, I wonder, so there's the pesticide called atrazine, which we'll talk more about pesticides, and this one will probably come up in our conversation, but the pesticide atrazine has like documentation of changing the gender of frogs. And so I wonder what exposure to atrazine plus like men having more estrogen in their system, like what that combination does to a man. And, it just makes you question like a lot of the gender dysphoria that we have happening in the world right now, if kind of a combination of these things all really impact something like that. And it's that body burden, like all of this compounds together. So if you have the pesticide exposure plus phthalates and fragrances and PFAS and microplastics, and your nutrition is really poor, it just creates this storm inside your body of confusion of like, what signals am I supposed to be sending to my body to say this, and what am I supposed to tell my brain? And so you wonder why so many people have things like gender dysphoria, or even like, again, Chrissy, you were talking about the very beginning, like, I'm sure a lot of this impacts our mood. Well, we have so many people who struggle with things like depression or even just like mental fog. Like, how many of us deal with fog every day of just waking up and being like, I just kind of don't want to do today. Like I struggled with that yesterday, but I think it was more weather related for me. But you just consider all of these chemicals and toxins that we're exposed to, and then you look at the world today and you just wonder, and you can just see it. Like you could start to see, oh yeah, this is real. Because I do know some people who are like, oh, this is kind of all conspiracy theory. It's whatever. But I'm like, this is literally science. So I don't know. Like there are science, like there's documentation of these things. In fact, I when we do our pesticide one, I'll link to the study that shows like the gender changing frogs when they're exposed to atrazine. So anyway, let's talk about our last one, fragrance, which is probably the most obvious to notice and experience because you smell it. You literally will smell this chemical and you know that it's there. Whereas something like parabens and phthalates, you kind of know based on how they show up in things. Like again, when you think of phthalates, you think of like flexible plastic, and it's used in cosmetics and lotions to kind of make them more silky and smooth. But for something like fragrance, you smell them before you ever know that they're actually there. And so whenever you see the phrase fragrance or parfum on an ingredient label, it's not just a single ingredient that is being listed there. We've mentioned this before, so you've probably heard this conversation, but fragrance or parfum is like code word for saying that there's probably hundreds of different chemicals all creating that one scent that you are smelling. And so it's like this chemical warfare that is happening in your body when you are exposed to these toxins. And so the reason that we're able, or we, not, gosh, we, but I guess we as like a country, the reason why,
society,
as a society, why we're able to do this, companies can do this because there are kind of like the trade laws, it just allow people to hide what actually makes up their product. And so it feels really, it's frustrating because you think that there's a lot of like clarity, or like you feel like these companies are being open about their ingredients because you go and see the list and you're like, everything is really clean and healthy. But then there's that word fragrance or parfum, even on something that's like an organic based product, or on something that's labeled clean or eco-friendly or whatever. Like when you see that packaging, you think, oh, it's going to be fine. But then they have this one ingredient, and even it might be listed as like the very last ingredient on the list, which means that it's the smallest use of that product. But still, you have no idea what is under that umbrella of fragrance that makes it be that smell. And so you have no idea what chemicals you're being exposed to.
Yeah, it's kind of like the natural flavors of the personal products world. Like we've talked about it before, like natural flavors is a way that companies can hide a lot of petroleum-based or natural gas-based products in their foods, because so long as it, quote, comes from the earth, then it's natural. But personally, I don't want to be drinking natural gas or petroleum, even though that comes from the earth. I don't even want to be eating or drinking anything that's derived from that, you know? And so fragrance is very similar to that. And like they can take a lot of things that would not, when you would look at it, you'd be like, oh, I don't want that on my skin. But they can hide it within the word fragrance. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. So what I actually found fascinating was I've always known, and not always, I have known in recent years now that fragrance is this code word for chemicals. But I didn't actually know what those chemicals were that made up the fragrance. And I learned that a major part of these fragrances are actually made up of phthalates. And so, again, going back to our phthalates that we just talked about, fragrances are often made up of many different phthalates. So it's like a hidden form of them. One of them is called, and I'm going to just butcher this, but we'll just say it. It's known as DEP. It's diethyl phthalate. Oh, diethyl phthalate. Okay, that wasn't as hard as it looked when I was about to say it. I was like, okay, here we go. Diethyl phthalate. So it's heavily used as a solvent and a fixative in fragrance to make the scent bind to your skin and last longer in the air. So you think of things like Febreze or any of the scents that you spray around the house to make it smell pretty, or you think of candles when they burn the scents and your house all of a sudden smells like cookies, and you're like, I didn't even bake cookies, but now it smells so delicious in here. Or you just think about when you rub lotion on you and the scent stays there for a long time. That is the phthalate, diethyl phthalate. So that is just a chemical then that is like binding to your skin and just sitting there, which is wild to think about that it's that we could just do this. But so on the flip side, if you love having scents and smells and beautiful things in your home like this, there are ways that we can have different fragrances and beautiful smelling things in our home. They just won't last as long as something like a chemical fragrance because they don't have this phthalate in them. So if you use things, why am I forgetting the name?
Because it's 9 a.m.
Oils, essential oils. There we go.
I didn't know what you were going for. I was like, I could start naming things off.
I'm like picturing, that's why I'm doing this with my hand. I'm like thinking of like dropping the essential oils, like, okay. Anyway, anyone listening can't see me doing my crazy hand gestures, so they don't know what I'm trying to say either. Anyway, essential oils. You think about essential oils, they smell really nice and very strong right when you use them, but they tend to just have a diluted smell quicker. Or if you use them in homemade personal care products, the scent won't last as long. They'll smell really nice right when you use them because they are very potent and strong, but again, they won't have that chemical in them that will make the fragrance stay there. So, I even think about when you walk into someone's home when they've just cleaned their house with traditional cleaners and you have that like pine sol scent and it's like really strong. Yes. And it's like, you just know, like there's that phthalate, the diethyl phthalate is in there and it's just clinging to everything. And now that I know that specifically too, I'm going to be like, Malachi, don't crawl on the floor. Don't touch that. Don't put that in your mouth. It's just, it's wild. It's everywhere. But okay. So with the fragrances, because these chemicals are not disclosed, they can just say, fragrance. You don't know what all the chemicals are. So diethyl phthalate is one of the many chemicals that is made up of, or makes up fragrance. But there are so many others, and there's kind of this like cumulative impact. So you have the extra phthalates in the product probably as well, because they already added them to it, but then they have these secret phthalates and other secret chemicals that we don't know what is in them. And you apply them directly to your skin or into the air that you're breathing, and they absorb into your bloodstream. And then again, with the phthalates and with the other chemicals that we've talked about, they block your hormone receptors, they mimic certain hormones, and so they're just going to confuse your system to tell it to do certain things or to not do certain things. And so you're basically altering the way that your hormones are being produced in your body. and the way that they are working and metabolizing throughout your body. And this all disrupts your endocrine system, impacting your fertility. And I feel like fragrance is probably, for me, it was one of the easier, well, easy slash not easy. It was easy in the sense that I was like, okay, anything that has a really smelly smell, I just kind of was like, I'm not going to use these anymore. And that was really obvious to me when those were, like, what those things were, because I'm so used to smelling them around my house. But the reason it was so hard to get rid of was because there were so many of them, like everything. Like I said, like cleaners, candles, our soaps, our lotions, our deodorants, like everything we use that smells pretty all has fragrance in it, and so all has these chemicals. And I think what's sad too is that I have learned that a lot of these quote unquote clean products also have fragrance, which is probably the most disappointing, because you're like, oh, I'm going to spend money on this thing that's supposedly supposed to be better for me, but then yet it still has all these chemicals, and that's frustrating. But
I listened to a podcast, I think sometime last year, and it was a woman who created a actual clean line of deodorant, and she said that one thing that's really hard for her business is when you go through and smell, everybody takes the cap off and smells the deodorant before they buy it, right?
oh yeah,
She said she just can't compete with the
yeah,
deodorants that have fragrance in them because she's not using fragrance. And so her deodorant just doesn't smell as florally or as strong or as quote unquote nice as some of these other deodorants. And so she said that actually hurts her business quite a bit because she's not willing to put fragrance in her products.
yeah. I don't know where. I think I read about this in a book, but it was how Febreze actually came to be so smelly. And I think it was in a book, and this
Well,
was
wasn't
years
it
ago.
supposed to? It was originally didn't have any smell to it. It was just an odor eliminator.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so they learned, so they created, and I'm sure the original formula without all the scents was probably not something you'd want to be spraying in your house anyway, because what it did was capture all of these smells, and it could, yeah, eliminate them somehow. I don't even remember how, but they did all these testing things with people where they would spray it in a house where a lady had like 20 cats, and it just obviously smelled like she had 20 cats in her home, but it like eliminated the smell of the 20 cats. And so they found out that this product really did work, but then they were having a really hard time selling it to anyone because, again, it had no smell, it had no scent, it just eliminated bad odors, which was good. It did what it was originally intended to do. But then I don't know, I think they tested it with some smells or something like that, and then eventually they learned that like stay-at-home moms especially, or just moms in general, loved being able to spray it like around the house, and it kind of gave that house a finishing touch after you've cleaned everything. And it's like, okay, now I'm going to do my Febreze and spray it all over the room. And once they added the scents to it, and you like, if you remember those commercials years ago where they would spray and they'd take that deep breath, and like they have like this happy smell, and you could see them smelling things in. And then all of a sudden when they added all those scents, then they were able to sell them, and now it's such like a popular product and household product nowadays. I used to use them. I love them. And they didn't originally have all of those fragrances, which is really interesting. But I wonder what the original formula was like and if it was any better for you anyway. So
It is a long lost formula that has been buried, I'm sure. Yep. All right. Well, we are nearing the end of our episode, so I hope you guys learned something new today. And I would challenge you, just as an action step from this episode, is to go through your bathroom and identify all of the products with parabens, phthalates, and fragrances in them. And I'm not saying throw them all away immediately. I'm saying develop a plan on how to swap them out when you run out. Because as Katie and I have said before, we are all about making clean swaps that are financially feasible. We don't want to go broke trying to get healthy, because so many gym bros saying you got to go broke to get healthy, and that ain't the truth. So our challenge for today, and we will post this in our Monday challenge that is posted every Monday on our Facebook group, Crunchy Christian Mamas on a Budget. So if you want to join us over there, go ahead, follow us, join our group. We would love to hear how you're doing at swapping out your products and things like that. But our challenge for this week is go through your bathroom and identify the products with parabens, phthalates, and fragrances in them, and develop a plan on how to swap them when they run out. Swapping them with cleaner ingredients, cleaner products overall. We've mentioned before, you can use EWG's website to find clean ingredients. You can use Bobby Approved to find clean products. And what's the last one that I really want to download that I keep forgetting the name of?
Yeah, it's called Switch Natural. You do have to pay for it. So it's like a one-time fee. I think it's like, it might be something like $20, which sounds like a lot, but it's one time. It's not like an annual subscription. And what's nice about it is you don't have to scan barcodes. You actually scan just the ingredients itself. And so it uses AI technology to read the ingredient labels and tell you what's wrong with any of the ingredients in there if there is something wrong. So that's the one challenge I have with EWG and Bobby, is that you often have to be able to actually scan the barcode. And then if it doesn't have that product in the system yet, it's like, oh, sorry, we don't know anything about this. And you're like, wait, what? So that's one thing that's nice. And you can like take pictures of something online, or like Chrissy does often, she sends me pictures of her products and she's like, will you scan this for me? And so I just need a photo basically of the ingredients in order to tell me what the products or the ingredients are in that product. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So those are some 3 resources that you can use to figure out if your products are good for you or not so good for you. And so we challenge you to see if you can go through that and figure that one out. Until next time, thanks for listening to Crunchy Stewardship, and remember that whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God. See you next time.